Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Massive Breakdown Podcast, episode 60. Got a nice short podcast for you this week. Not a ton to talk about. I am still just plinking away at this game, playing all the different classes, all the different subclasses, trying out as many weapons as I can. I hear you've done a ton of research on mods that you'd like to start sharing with us.
Yeah, I spent several hours reviewing video footage and going frame by frame. Mods, there's a lot of them, but then there's, I guess, after going through them all, I feel like there's not as much variety as you might have thought. And I think there's some pretty clear favorites in terms of what is beneficial. So first off, I guess we can start with the ability mods first. So there are 3 mods that increase your ability scores, and those are the Impact Absorption mod, which gives +1 resilience, stacking with the resilience from your armor, and that is something that you can put on a helmet or on a Titan mark. So Titans can get 2 of those, everybody else can get 1. We've also got a self-repairing mod, and that gives +1 recovery, and that can go on leg armor or on a Warlock bond. So again, Warlocks max recovery, Titans max resilience, and then Hunters, of course, max mobility. So you've got an acceleration mod, which can go on arms or on a Hunter cloak, and that gives +1 mobility. So these mods each give just a small bump.
Basically, resilience just increases the amount of shield you get. I believe every Guardian has 70 health by default. But yeah, basically what resilience does is it takes your shield variable up from 116 to 131. 116 would be 0 resilience, and 131 would be 10, a full 10 resilience. So it definitely changes what you can survive. There are quite a few time to kill changes where guns will kill in one less shot, and that increases as you go up in resiliency levels. But most importantly, it dramatically increases the percentage of critical hits that your opponent has to get on you to get the optimal time to kill. So I highly recommend maxing resilience or getting as much as you absolutely can. At the very bare minimum, please run at least 2 resilience. Never run 0 or 1 resilience. You will notice you are getting killed a lot faster by a lot of different weapons if you do.
I would 100% agree. I would even go so far as to say that if you're running less than 4, you're probably handicapping yourself against a lot of the weapons that people are running in the Crucible right now. So the self-repairing mod gives +1 recovery. Now this, I don't think, is exactly the same for every point of recovery. I think it can vary a little bit as the benefit of resilience does. But each point of recovery gives you approximately 0.3 seconds faster time to get your health back completely. That sounds like a pretty small benefit, but keeping in mind that time to kill is hovering around 1 to 1.2 seconds. Getting fully healed 0.3 seconds faster means you're getting back into the fight that much sooner. It's tough for people to finish you off compared to Destiny 2. If you're able to get into cover, every fraction of a second counts in terms of getting your health back. So sticking close to cover and having a higher recovery stat is going to make it a lot easier for you to stay in the fight and get back in the fight after a kill. So the acceleration mod gives +1 mobility. What mobility does in Destiny 2 is the same thing that it did in Destiny 1. That is, it increases your jump height, it increases your walking/jogging speed, and it increases your speed while crouching. Because it increases walking speed, it also increases strafing, because keep in mind, strafing is just walking sideways. It does not affect sprint speed at all. The only way to affect sprint speed is to have Mida multi-tool, Mida mini-tool, or what's the Warlock exotic that I'm forgetting? Is it Transversive Steps? So mobility is not worthless. It does visibly affect your speed, strafing side to side. Visibly affects your jump height, and it does help you get places faster if you don't want to sprint. If you want to be able to engage more easily, then it is not a worthless stat. But I guess I don't feel like it has a great deal of value compared to recovery and resilience.
I use mobility because of the strafe speed, basically. That's pretty much the only reason I use it. And I also really appreciate the perks that give you faster speed when you're ADS.
Since we're talking about abilities, let's talk about your actual cooldown abilities, the melee, the grenade, and the class ability. So we've got elemental mods. For all of those, we've got Arc, Solar, and Void, Impact mods, Ordnance mods, and Paragon mods. The Impact mods, of course, affect melee. The Ordnance mods affect your grenade cooldown, and the Paragon mods affect just that class ability like we talked about earlier. Each of these mods reduces the cooldown by approximately 9%. For reference, let's talk about what that actually means in terms of seconds. So for reference, grenade cooldowns are 83 seconds for every grenade in the game except for the Firebolt and Arc Bolt, which are 60 seconds. The Titan and Warlock melee cooldowns are 83 seconds except for the Stormcaller melee, which actually has a 96-second cooldown. And the Hunter melee cooldowns are also 96 seconds because they are awesome. As for class abilities, the Hunter dodge cooldown is pretty close to 25 seconds. Some people are going to count it as 24. Like I said, it depends on when you decide that it counts as activated and start counting frames. So whatever. Titan wall cooldown is approximately 38 seconds, and the Warlock Rift cooldown is 83 seconds. So as far as how these mods work, of course, if you have one mod on, that reduces the cooldown by 9%. So you might think, okay, well, if I have two mods, does that give me 18% off? And at first I thought that it did, but I double checked my math and I actually found that it does not. There is an actual diminishing return, and that's because it's literally a percentage, so they're actually being multiplied. So you'll take 83 seconds times 0.91 and then take that number times 0.91 again, and what that ends up coming out to is essentially taking the base time multiplied by 0.83. So it's essentially about a 17% discount with two mods, and then with three you're getting approximately 24% off of the time. So you can take quite a bit of time off, especially for the grenade and the melee cooldowns. You can do a ton, or the Warlock Rift, you can make a really big difference. Hunter dodge cooldown, of course, does not change a whole lot. Even with three mods, you're taking it down to 18 seconds instead of 25. So whether or not that's worth it, I guess, is up to you. Titan cooldown, of course, is fairly similar. You're only getting a limited amount of time off with the Paragon mods there, but the grenade mods give you a ton of time off. The melee mods give you a ton of time off. Grenade mods in particular, to me, are valuable because the grenades, while they can't one-hit kill, are definitely really useful for winning gunfights and controlling objectives. So that is those mods in a nutshell. So the other mods that you've got available, we've got the kinetic and energy counterbalance mods that you mentioned. The kinetic counterbalance mod can go on chest armor or on a hunter cloak, and the energy counterbalance mod can go on arms or a hunter cloak. So hunters can double up either one of those but not both, and everybody else can have one of each. And what those appear to do is add a straight stat bonus to recoil direction. I can say with 99.9% confidence that they do in fact work. However, if you are increasing the recoil direction stat of a weapon that has recoil direction of 90, it is going to 100, or if the stat goes that high, 110. And your visible difference in terms of the recoil pattern is going to be basically nil. If you had like heat mapping software and you could sit there and just empty 100 magazines with and without them, you could probably detect the difference. For those of us in the real world who play this game as a hobby and who do this kind of research as a hobby because this is the kind of thing that's fun for us, and in the meantime, we can say with confidence that if you are applying those mods on a weapon that has crappy recoil, if a weapon with a recoil direction of 50 or 60 or even 70, it's going to be visibly detectable, and the gun is going to feel more vertical, and in reality, it will be shooting more vertically. And I think the Lincoln Green test that you did, you posted screenshots of that on Twitter, I don't know, a week and a half ago, are, a prime example of a weapon that has horrible recoil, and the mods, like it's indisputable that they work. So I did do wall tests with Mida because I was curious, and because it's the gun that is getting 30% of the kills in trials or whatever. So I was like, well, let's see, and it did go noticeably vertical, adding 1 and then 2 mods. It was a very clear difference. That said, in actual play, it does not seem to matter. And I think that the reason for that is because it has a pretty high range stat. Being a scout rifle, it has high base range, and then its range stat is pretty good. Well above average for a lightweight scout rifle, which I think I've said before. But its aim assist stat is 100.
I've never really found that scout rifles benefit a ton from counterbalance perks. Now, that being said, that's because in Destiny 1 we didn't have a lot of fast rate of fire scout rifles, and in Destiny 2 we have a lot of fast rate of fire scout rifles. But I've honestly just never felt like I had any issue keeping the recoil vertical. To each their own, it's really just a feel thing. That's what it comes down to. Lincoln Green, I very much think that it needs counterbalance in order to tighten up that burst. But some auto rifles I also think are much better with counterbalance attached to them. I don't know many of the auto rifles that have great recoil directions by default. I think they're all pretty much low. There's a few of them in the adaptive that have like 75 plus 70, 75, somewhere around there. And then obviously like hardline sweep business have 100. Their recoil direction is straight up and down. But for the most part, I think you can always tack one onto an auto rifle and just make it feel better. For the most part, you can, not that pulse rifles are super competitive, but Nightshade, Nurgle, Agenda 5, Heart of Time, tack a counterbalance or 2 onto there and see how it goes. Also, by the way, just ran the test on the number, which has a recoil direction of 70, and the Galliard 42, which also has a recoil direction of 70, and the number was pretty much straight up and down, and the Galliard 42 was not. The Galliard 42 pulled about 30 to 45 degrees to the left.
Okay, so that confirms what I saw with Origin Story then, which was also pretty much straight up and down.
So I don't know if that necessarily means that the slower rate of fire has to do with it. I do not think it does. I think that means that the precision intrinsic perk actually does benefit. Them in some way.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I had a feeling that a lot of these intrinsic perks were doing something to the stats behind the scenes. So we've got some reload speed mods. There's a kinetic munition loader and a power munition loader. These gave different percentages back when I was doing the math for the weapons that I checked. So I think that they are probably really stat bonuses as well. But I did not do a ton of testing on the reload mods aside from to get kind of a baseline for what they're going to do for you. So on average, you can probably bet that you're going to get something in the vicinity of a 10% bonus. The power munition loader, I tested a couple of different power weapons, and it came out to 9% pretty much every time. The kinetic munition loader, I actually had to rely on a third party to test that one because it has never dropped for me. So that one, the frames came out to 12%. But with a larger sample size, we might see that vary a little bit. Like I said, I think it's probably a stat bonus to reload speed rather than a percentage bonus. So they definitely do give you a significant benefit, but is it worthwhile? I would say in most cases, probably not. For me, probably not a great choice. The kinetic munition loader can go on arms or a Titan Mark, so it's competing with counterbalance mods. It's competing with some of the cooldown mods. It's competing with an acceleration. Well, it's not competing with an acceleration mod. Oh, it is on arms. It is. So there's a lot of different choices in those slots, and I don't know that a 10% buff to reload speed, while it is something that you can actually see the animation move a little bit faster, I don't know that it's worthwhile. The power munition loader might be worthwhile because reload speed on power weapons is abysmally slow for a lot of them. And a 10% bonus is actually a fairly significant amount of time, or a 9% bonus. So that may actually be worthwhile. That can go on the chest armor or on a Titan mark. Again, those do stack, so you can stack 2 of them. You'll get, roughly 17% increase to reload speed. I don't know that it's worth stacking them, but if you don't have another good mod in one of those slots, that's not a bad one to have. That said, power munition loader is going to be worthless in PvP. It's only valuable in PvE. There's no reason that you should ever have to reload in the open unless you just are way out of position. That's those, and then we've got 2 mods left here. We have an energy bracket mod and a power bracket mod. These mods increase weapon handling for their respective weapon slots. So the energy bracket mod can go on the helmet or on a warlock bond, and the power bracket mod goes on a chest piece or again on a warlock bond. So warlocks can double up on extra handling speed. Because the other ones appear to be stat bonuses, I think this is probably also a stat bonus to the handling stat. However, it came out to approximately 15% across the board. So either I didn't test a broad enough set of handling stats, or it works differently from the other ones. I can't say for sure at this point. I don't know that it makes a huge difference in use. The important thing to know is that it is going to increase your speed when equipping the weapon, when stowing the weapon, when aiming down sights, and when zooming back out. All of those saw a roughly 15% increase across the board for every weapon that I tested. Again, weapons with slow handling stats or low handling stats are going to see the greatest benefit there because you are taking the most time. Again, on heavies, a lot of heavies have a much slower base handling. I haven't spent a whole lot of time with sniper rifles because I'm still bad at sniping in Destiny 2. But speaking as far as like shotguns, fusion rifles, rocket launchers, a lot of their handling stats are pretty slow, even if the handling stat itself is high. So these definitely make a huge difference in actual time. And that brings us to the end of the mods, though. That is all of the mods that there are for armor. So that is all I've got. Peace.